March 3rd, 4:17 a.m., eastern border of Europe. The sky was still dark when the first signs appeared. There were no explosions. There were no sirens. They were silences. NATO satellites have detected something strange. Simultaneous movements of Russian troops in multiple strategic regions. Armored vehicles advancing slowly. Missile systems being positioned with precision. Military communications being encrypted at the highest level. And then the signal disappeared. For 47 seconds, the world was completely blind. No satellite, no radar, no reliable communication. When everything came back, it was already too late. This would be the beginning of a scenario that military analysts avoid even mentioning in public. A direct confrontation between NATO and Russia. But here's the question that no one can answer with certainty. If that actually happened, who would win? For decades, this hypothesis was treated as impossible. A conflict too big, too risky, too destructive to even be considered. But the world has changed. Tensions have risen. Alliances have become more fragile. And modern warfare is no longer just about soldiers and tanks. Today, it involves technology, economics, information, and something far more dangerous, perception. Because even before the first shot is fired, the war has already begun in people's minds. And that's exactly what makes this confrontation so unpredictable. On one side, NATO, the largest military alliance in modern history. More than 30 countries, including powers such as the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. A bloc with massive economic power, advanced technology, and a global military presence. On the other side, Russia, a power that has learned over centuries to fight at a disadvantage and still survive. A country with one of the largest nuclear arsenals on the planet, an aggressive military doctrine, and a unique ability to transform chaos into strategy. But here's the detail that changes everything. This war would not be fought like the previous ones. It wouldn't just happen on battlefields. It would occur simultaneously on multiple levels. In space, with satellites being neutralized, on the internet, with cyber attacks capable of shutting down entire cities, in the economy, with markets collapsing in a matter of hours, and psychologically, with populations living under constant fear, and perhaps the most frightening of all, war could begin without most people realizing it. But there is a truth that few understand. The strongest side doesn't always win. And in the next few minutes, you'll find out exactly why. Because when we analyze this real confrontation, the answer ceases to be simple and becomes dangerous. To understand who would win, you need to forget everything you think you know about war, because this would not be an ordinary battle. It wouldn't just be about who has more soldiers or more tanks. It would be about who controls the pace of the collapse. And here, the advantage begins to be divided. On one side, NATO, an alliance with over 3 million active military personnel, a combined budget exceeding trillions of dollars, and technological dominance that redefines modern warfare. The United States alone spends more on defense than several countries combined. This represents a clear advantage, near absolute. Air superiority, fighter jets invisible to radar, autonomous, drones operating on a large scale, satellites capable of tracking movements in real time with surgical precision. In theory, this should end any war quickly. But it is precisely here that the situation begins to change, because on the other side is Russia, and Russia doesn't play by the same rules. Unlike NATO, which relies on coordination between dozens of countries, Russia operates with a centralized, fast-paced, and extremely efficient structure in combat decisions. She doesn't need to wait for political consensus. She acts, and more importantly, she has been preparing for this type of confrontation for decades. The Russian doctrine does not merely seek to win battles. She seeks to completely disrupt the enemy even before direct confrontation. Hybrid attacks, massive cyber attacks, electronic warfare capable of blinding radars and disorienting entire defense systems. And perhaps the most critical point of all, Russia has a huge geographical advantage. Any direct conflict would begin near its borders. This drastically reduces response time, it increases logistical efficiency, and it allows for much faster mobilization of troops and equipment. Meanwhile, NATO forces would need to travel great distances to position themselves, and in war, time is everything, but there is an even more dangerous detail that few consider. NATO is extremely powerful, but it depends on unity. And unity in a real war scenario can become a weakness because each country has its own interests. Every government faces internal pressures, and every decision needs to be discussed, and in a high-intensity conflict, seconds of delay can mean thousands of lives. Now, compare that to Russia's centralized decision-making, immediate response, without lengthy debates, without internal political blockages. This does not mean that Russia is stronger, but it means she could be faster. And at certain points in the war, this could change everything. But here comes the point that truly redefines the game. This war would not be decided solely by direct military force. It would be decided by whoever manages to survive the initial impact, because the beginning of this conflict, it would be devastating. Simultaneous attacks, critical infrastructure is being destroyed, energy systems rapidly collapsing, communications are being disrupted on a large scale, and in just a few hours, the whole world would feel the effects. But the real question isn't who starts stronger. The question is who continues fighting after the initial chaos. If war were to begin, the initial impact would only be the beginning, because in the following hours, the world would descend into a level of chaos that no current generation has ever witnessed. Entire cities would begin to go dark, not through immediate bombings, but for something much quieter. Coordinated cyber attacks could simultaneously target power grids, banking systems, and communications. Within hours, millions of people would be without power, without access to money, and without reliable information. And that wouldn't be a side effect, it would be a central part of the strategy. Russia, known for its capabilities in hybrid warfare, would use internal collapse as a powerful weapon to create confusion, to generate panic, and most importantly, to make the enemy lose control even before the direct confrontation. But the answer would come, and it would be quick. The United States and its NATO allies would activate full defense. Protocols, anti-missile systems would be placed on high alert. Naval fleets would move immediately. Strategic aircraft would be crossing the sky in a matter of minutes, and then the first major confrontation would happen, but not on the ground. And here, the initial advantage would belong to NATO. Technological superiority, larger number of advanced aircraft, ability to coordinate simultaneous attacks in multiple regions. In the first few days, NATO would likely dominate the skies, but that wouldn't end the war, because Russia doesn't rely solely on air superiority. She depends on something even more dangerous: prolonged resistance. As NATO forces advance, Russia retreats, reorganizes, and counterattacks with increasing intensity. Supply lines are starting to come under pressure. Hostile terrain hinders any rapid advance, and the human cost is starting to rise rapidly. And this is exactly where the game completely changes, because modern wars are not won with military power alone. They are overcome with resistance. Who can endure the longest? Who can bear the most losses? Who keeps the structure functioning even under total collapse? And in this scenario, the advantage is starting to become uncertain. But then comes the factor that changes everything, the factor that neither side wants to use. But both are prepared to activate nuclear weapons. Both Russia and NATO possess arsenals capable of destroying the planet multiple times over. And when one side starts to lose, the pressure to climb is increasing dangerously. Military doctrines allow for tactical use in extreme situations. And the problem is simple. All it takes is one decision, one single order, and the conflict ceases to be regional, to become global. It's irreversible. But here's the scariest part. The war may not end with a clear winner, because at this level, winning can mean simply surviving. So we're back to the initial question. If a war between NATO and Russia were to actually happen, who would win? The short answer is simple, nobody. But the real answer is much more complex, because when analyzed objectively, NATO has clear advantages: economic superiority, more advanced technology, greater capacity for global projection. In a prolonged conflict, without nuclear escalation, the trend would be towards a progressive weakening of Russia, constant economic pressure, growing international isolation, resource reduction over time. In this scenario, NATO would have a more realistic chance of winning, but that depends on an extremely fragile condition control, because everything changes the moment the climb gets completely out of control, and that's precisely where Russia becomes unpredictable. His military doctrine permits the use of extreme force when the survival of the state is at risk, and that includes the use of tactical nuclear weapons. And once that limit is crossed, there is no such thing as a traditional strategy anymore. There are no more clear victories. There is only survival, and maybe not even that. Now imagine the chain reaction. A tactical nuclear strike leads to an immediate response. One answer leads to another. And in a matter of hours, the world is entering a scenario that has never been tested in practice. Large-scale destruction, global economic collapse, entire cities disappearing. From the map, government systems are failing rapidly, and billions of people are being impacted, directly or indirectly. At this point, it doesn't matter who started stronger. What matters is who is still able to exist. And here is the truth that few want to admit. A war between NATO and Russia would not be a war to win. It would be a war to avoid losing everything. And perhaps that is the greatest paradox of all. The more power the sides possess, the lower the chance of someone actually emerging victorious, because destruction grows at the same rate. And in the end, the line between victory and defeat simply disappears. Now the question changes completely. It's no longer a question of who would win. And is it worth finding out? Because this is the type of conflict that redefines human history, not by the winner, but because of the consequences and perhaps the true purpose of all this power. That is, you never need to use it. If you want to understand more scenarios like this, strategic analyses, and stories that few dare to explore, subscribe to the channel now, because here we don't just tell stories, we reveal what can change the world.